Mythbusters. Hi, I'm Ken from Avvora Finance broker.
Hi, I'm Debra from Crave Property Advisory.
And I'm Gilmovich from Real Property Manager.
So we're here to bust the myths around the contradictions and misleading information in the property investing space. For the next 10 minutes, we'll be discussing it's really hard to change your property service provider.
The myth that it's really
hard to change your property service provider. So John, what is a property service provider?
Yeah, good question, Ken. So some of the service providers that you could be working with as a property investor could be an actual selling agent. If they appoint an agent to sell their property, could be a property manager, could be a strata manager, and of course it could be a buyer's agent.
That's right, or finance broker.
Absolutely, and finance brokers.
Yeah.
We'll just slip that one in.
Yeah.
So, John, from my perspective, and I've had this experience, one of the trickiest service providers to change is your property manager mid-term. So can you talk to us about whether that's actually feasible and the pros and cons?
Yeah, absolutely. So surrounding property managers' termination, if landlord's not happy, there are a few misconceptions out there about how to switch agents, and that's probably the most challenging part, the actual misconceptions landlords have. And so the answer is yes, you can swap.
Even if you've got a contract.
Even if you've got a contract. So when we talk about contract in property management land, there are basically two: the tenancy agreement and the actual management agreement authority. So the management agreement authority is the authority that the landlord signs appointing the agent to manage their property.
Yeah.
And the two of them do not have any correlation to each other. And usually there's a myth around that, and that being, if I've signed a lease agreement with the tenant for 12 months, am I locked in as the property investor for that 12-month period? The answer is no. Because the tenancy agreement has no correlation to the actual management agreement. Most management agreements run month to month, but they do have a termination clause to
give notice.
You can give notice, and you need to look at the actual management agreement and not the lease agreement to find out how much notice period you actually have to give if the landlord's unhappy.
Yeah, with the land.
Yeah.
And so some of the reasons why you would change, like I could.
Yeah, probably the three. Well, I know you've experienced it yourself, but probably the three biggest reasons is the property's vacant and the current agent hasn't been able to lease it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a vacancy. It's being prolonged. The marketing might be not great quality, or there could be simply poor communication going on between the property manager and the landlord themselves, not advising them with actually what's going on. What are the outcomes of the open houses? Do we need to adjust the price? Do we need to change the marketing at all? So that's probably one. Number two, the actual property is being mismanaged.
Or you're not getting information.
You're not getting information, you're not updated on matters, they're not doing their basic services, which is rent reviews, property inspections.
And sending photos?
And sending photos, of course, is a part of that. And of course, one of the big areas is repairs and maintenance mismanagement on the property. Probably the biggest one, I would have to say, is just purely a lack of communication and no transparency with what's going on.
Yeah, that's so good to hear.
Yeah.
We tell all our clients that communication with your property manager is the most critical. You think so as well.
So to switch, it's not a difficult process. It does not require a lot of involvement from the actual property investor. They can be completely at arm's length with the whole process. All they need to do is basically sign a letter terminating the other agent's services and then give authority to the new agent to collect the files and keys and start communicating with the new tenant.
Yeah, and so it's not even something that you have to feel is confronting, because the two property managers will talk to one another. It's not like you've got to go and take the keys off one.
Yeah, so the handover process is generally smooth, unless the current managing agent is being extremely difficult. There is a way to deal with that, and there is a complaints department, for example, at Office of Fair Trading,
All
if
right.
they're not cooperating or handing over the correct paperwork,
Yep. Okay.
you can ring up and log them in.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
The complaints register.
Yeah, they're very busy at Office of Fair
They
Trade.
are. I believe.
Okay, well, thanks for that, John.
Welcome.
So, Ken, from your perspective, is it possible to change a finance broker midstream?
Yeah, so to answer that question in short, yes, you certainly can. There isn't any real issues with that. Generally speaking, with most brokers, there isn't any application fees or anything like that which is charged. Some might, and they rebate that after, and they can rebate that after settlement. So generally speaking, no, it's as simple as picking up the phone, contacting another trusted broker, and away you go. Even if the application is midstream, probably the biggest challenge is trying to pick up that particular application. But generally speaking, I guess a lot of times people do switch brokers partway through an application is because the application has stalled. So there's a critical condition that cannot be met, so the loan won't be approved, or it's just taking too long. You know, there's a deadline on settlement. They went with maybe the most competitive lender, and every broker is, you know, funneling their clients to take full advantage of this product, and they're also receiving a lot of inquiries directly into the lender, and that could blow out the service levels in terms of how long it takes for them to process the application. So in that particular case, then it might make sense to change lenders. So if you had applied directly to a lender, then you probably have to go through the whole process again, so giving your information, your details, your financial statements and things like that, which can be quite cumbersome. If you did go through a broker, it would be easier to change. Communication probably is another big thing, just making sure that everything's up to date, and the broker's being proactive in making sure that all the parties are talking to each other if there are any particular hurdles, reaching out to those like the solicitor, the conveyancer, the real estate agent, etc. So some of the issues with changing, I guess, is the credit score. So if you have actually been shopping around, especially direct to lenders, and you're submitting applications to get pricing, it can kind of impact your credit score and then ultimately impact whether you get the loan or not, because some lenders do credit score. So
I thought all of them did.
yeah, and the other one is just really redoing all the application and filling out all the information and details again. So if you do go through a broker, you generally don't have to. But generally speaking, with the document side of things, you probably have everything ready to go. So all you need to do is just notify another broker, and then away you go with lodgement and things like that.
Yep.
So
Okay, so that, in effect, it doesn't really handicap the actual process of a loan application by switching midstream.
it does,
Jumping
because you
horse.
will need to restart the whole application again. Generally, another broker won't be able to pick up an application that the initial broker has submitted. So you do have to reset the clock. So when you do lose that time, you're going to be selecting a lender who can process it within time, within their deadlines. Yeah, 100%.
That's why it's more important to actually have your pre-approval done before you actually start looking, and not just do it when you find a property and only have 5 days to get finance approval.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Ken. Now, Deborah, the mysterious world of appointing a buyer's agent being a relatively newer field of property services.
Yeah, it is.
How does that work?
So, thanks for asking. There's a number of reasons why people would want to change their buyer's agent midstream. Number one is often people are hard sold into making a purchase, and it's not until they get further into the purchase that they realise actually that person who said they were looking didn't look at all and was just selling them something off a list. So in those sorts of situations, hopefully the buyer hasn't actually paid any money up front. And once again, you also double check your contracts to see what you were held to.
So what would a good buyer's agent be doing with a property investor that met for the first time?
A good one.
Is there a strategy? Should there be a strategy behind appointing a buyer's agent?
Yeah, there should be, but the problem is at the moment, the majority of people don't take that path. So taking a step back, if you are about to make a purchase and you're going to use a buyer's agent, you should have at least one meeting with that buyer's agent to set a strategy before you even sign anything.
An official contract.
That's right. And most of the qualified practitioners will outline a plan for you, and they need some time to prepare that plan. And then after the buyer has gone away and had a look at that plan, then they should receive a service agreement or a contract from a good buyer's agent that will outline exactly
full disclosure.
Who's responsible for what the pricing will be, and how it will roll out, how long they'll search for, all of that kind of thing.
So what's a typical buyer's agent's contract look like as far as the length of
I do it is that someone's making a call. The way I do it is the buyer will pay a small component of the search fee up front, so we've got a commitment, and then we say that we will continue to look for people for up to 12 months, but you'll know within the first 4 weeks whether we're on the right path. And so I offer a 100% money back guarantee. So if we start looking and it's not feeling right, and that can happen from my perspective too, I might find that the buyer's expectations are way too high and I'm never going to meet them. So I'll say to them, you know what,
this is
not
working out.
this
is not working well. Yeah.
So then we can.
So you have a right to terminate the client as well as the client terminate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The service provider.
And it comes down to communication. So if most people will get a really good feeling about the communication from each of their providers, and if you feel like you're being shunted down a particular path and not being heard, that's a really good reason to raise a flag and go, wait a minute, that's not working. Because we know that there's a lot of other buyer's agents out there who will shuffle all these people into their basket, and then they actually shop one property around to a basket of people, and so the buyer is just on the end of a list and they get a yes or no kind of vote. Anyway, but I digress and we're running out of time. So
that's interesting. Okay, and so so you're working. You're generally working exclusively. You're generally working exclusively with a client for a period of time. If either party not happy, then you can part ways and you move on. Yeah, and the other rider is if I've presented them with a well-researched property, for 6 months after that, the buyer cannot just walk away and go and buy that property, because I will find out how to do that. Here's an interesting question. Can a buyer, while working with you on an agreement, and they source the property themselves, what happens there? It doesn't happen very often, but it has happened to me. I've been in business for nearly 5 years, and when it does happen, it's usually because I've helped the buyer identify what kind of criteria there is, and so then we would normally work together. The one time it has happened to me is when the buyer had kind of flipped between one location and another, and so we actually had the property that they came up with was on their list. They'd flipped to another suburb, so we started looking in this other suburb, and then they went back. And anyway, it was just, again, communication, because we were working together, and they recognised that without my help they wouldn't have been able to even identify that this particular property was right for them. And I think some, like where there's some buyers agents who work
exclusively only in a couple of suburbs, they have a more rigid approach around it, in that they say to their clients, no point in you, if you source it, it's
shopping and
mine.
changing, that really doesn't help me in any way, because we need to just stick to our goal and stay on the straight and narrow, not diverse.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
you need to work as a team. You need to work as a team. We all want to save time. But the other thing, so that's, there's certain situations where people have paid some money up front, or they might have been charged the full service. If you're in a situation where you're looking for a property and you're charged a full fee up front, don't pay the full fee. It's just a rule in life. Even working with builders, you never pay the full.
They can shoot off.
That's right. It's the biggest red flag. So you only ever pay a percentage, but there are some
balance on completion.
That's right. But the other big black hole that people fall into is where they are not charged a fee up front, and that's where they're being sold off the plan, being given house and land, or being shopped through a particular list, and you won't realise until you've wasted a couple of months with these people. So if you're in that situation, at least you haven't put any money on the table, pull out, and then go and find yourself a buyer's agent who will actually listen to you and prove that they are actually sourcing original property and not being paid by a developer or double dipping. And so as to the reasons why you would change your buyer's agent, simply if they're just not getting onto the criteria.
Ultimately they want a result.
That's right.
That's what you're paying for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But look, I have looked. There was one particular couple. Hello, if you're listening. Where we looked for 24 months.
Wow.
And that's because we were looking in the Sydney market and we were looking for specific things, and they and we've now gone over time. And they and the market kept going up and up and up. And
So they kept missing out.
Well,
the market was running away from them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, that's. Thanks for that, Deborah. That's pretty insightful, and understanding the buyer's agent perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
So,
thanks for watching. We love your feedback. Please join the Property Mythbusters Facebook group to send us questions or myths you would like busted. If you can, you can also contact us directly through our social channels. So until next time,
thank
we'll
you.
see you
Property
later.
Mythbusters.